Today's morning coffee vinyl side. Blue Northern 1981. Today we bring you another morning coffee vinyl side Vancouver Van-Tastic Vinyl selection, where we feature a record or artist, current or historical, with a significant Vancouver connection. Today's selection is the self-titled debut LP by Vancouver country-flavored rockers Blue Northern. And the story of Blue Northern, in many ways, starts with the story of Ray O'Toole, and that started in a garage in Haney. In the mid to late 60s, guitarist and vocalist Ray O'Toole was part of a garage band in Haney called the Bad Boys that made some local noise. A name change to the Northwest Company coincided with a recording contract and increased regional attention. An EP was released, some more regional attention garnered, and they continued to level up in increments with additional signings and singles until Ray left the band in 1971. He made a brief return in 73, playing with the band until they broke up for good in 74. As best as I can tell, Ray kicked around the local scene following the demise of the Northwest Company, playing pickup gigs and jam nights until he found himself playing with Gary Comu, piano fiddle, Leroy Stevens, bass, and Jimmy Wilson, pedal steel, who had been gigging under the name Blue Northern. Though more of a loosely organized country jam band at the time, there was enough musical chemistry there that O'Toole brought in drummer Brady Gustafson, and the five-some sound began to move away from country towards a country rock hybrid. The Blue Northern members enjoyed drinking and jamming at Vancouver's original Yale Hotel Bar, famous both locally and internationally as a blues and jam venue, and it was there they met someone that would eventually join the band and change their musical trajectory, American musician Billy Cowsill. Billy Cowsill was famous for being the oldest sibling and musical principal in the late 60s American family band, the Cowsills. The Cowsills were the band on which the television show The Partridge Family was based. Billy made his bones with the family band and honed his chops both as a musician and record producer at a very young age until a drunken confrontation with his abusive father, the band manager and patriarch in the early 70s, led to his departure and the eventual dissolution of the family band. Billy kicked around the U.S. for several years, but was unable to capitalize on any opportunities there as his life was quickly unraveling under the dizzying effects of booze and a hardcore drug habit. His escape was a self-imposed exile to Canada, originally Yellowknife, until making his way to Vancouver and finding himself within the orbit of the Blue Northern. Cowsill's presence served as a catalyst to change, and his association with the band, first as a casual sit-in on vocals and percussion, and later as a full-fledged band member, led him to taking the lead role producing their first EP, Blue, and then this, their only full-length album. Cowsill brought two things to the table: his name and experience as a producer that gave the band some much-needed credibility, and more importantly, the polish he put on their songs and arrangements, particularly on their vocal harmonies, that gave the material a much-needed radio appeal. This album stands as a curious mix of Beatles and Beach Boys-styled vocal harmonies, sort of a Badfinger light power pop sound, with songs that are generally structured like old-time rock and roll compositions, all flavored with a country twang. There are 4 or 5 songs here that are quite good, even if fairly derivative. The vocals, with Ray O'Toole singing, are fantastic. Songs he penned like You're Not the Same Girl and Can't Stop have some great moments, but much of the album is underbaked, particularly in the musical tracks. What's missing might be best understood by comparing Blue Northern to a band with similar influences, Canada's Sloan. By comparison, Blue Northern lacks the musical hooks and flourishes here to add excitement to and support the vocals. There's a general lack of dynamics and musical interplay, and the rhythm section is weak, particularly the bass, and that lack of drive and some obviously poorly executed turnarounds keep the songs tethered. The onus on this, though, rests on Billy's shoulders as producer. Billy, as a big fish in a small pond, was able to move the project forward, giving it much needed form, function, and momentum, and a professional polish, but his critical ear was compromised by his desire to show he could still pull it off and his drug habit. Although the band did share co-production credits, the responsibility is really Billy's as producer, which is one of the reasons working with an outside producer can be so critical to a band's development. They bring that critical ear into the mix. A good producer, under different circumstances, would have helped the band punch these tracks up in a jiffy. Way lesser bands have made way more successful albums on the strengths of a good producer. Billy, unfortunately, was handicapped. Comparatively, if you listen to, say, Badfinger or Sloan, or even someone like Los Angeles-based The Knack, also doing a version of power pop from the exact same time period, you'll hear quite quickly what's missing. The whole thing is good, even pretty good, but only in a small pond Vancouver way. And in truth, by 1981, Vancouver's pond was already becoming much bigger and more important nationally and internationally as the talent pool of engineers, producers, managers, and musicians that had been incubating here since the 60s were all coming online. Had Blue Northern released this album in 1977, they may have had somewhere to go. But by 1981, it was, in some respects, too little, too late, despite the promise. And if you know anything about being involved with an alcoholic with a heroin addiction, you'd understand the reasons behind Blue Northern's demise as a band. They were done by '82. Now, the members of Blue Northern dispersed back into the world after disbanding, some remaining in music, others not. Billy would hold it together for a while, staying in Canada and fronting a couple of additional band projects with moderate success before his early death in 2006. Ray would continue to gig, fronting his own band and releasing new music into the late 80s, and by all accounts is still playing in some capacity today. But Blue Northern, that Canadian band that took in an American vagabond and almost hit the big time, well, they'll forever remain a legend in the growing lore of the Vancouver music scene.